So let me pause right there because there's a few gems that you dropped. One, you talked about knowing what you were up against as
Yeah.
far as, you know, the other people that will be interviewing for these are probably going to be coming from maybe Harvard, these
Yes.
top-notch business schools where they have resources that you don't have or may
Mm-hmm.
not have. Knowing that and still being able to prepare at almost the same level, if not better, by going out and getting a coach, getting into these message boards or groups with other people that are in that same situation, and just practicing and going back and forth, and you know getting yourself to that level of preparedness at where they will probably also be.
Yeah.
Right. I think that was awesome because a lot of people going for you know interviews or trying to switch things don't necessarily always understand what they're up against in these job markets. Secondly, I think it was important what you had said something else about. You wrote down your the reason why you were leaving. You were looking to leave the current job and what you hope to gain when you in the new job. Can you share what you hope to gain?
Sure. I hope to gain three main things. Number one, I wanted a more rigorous approach to problem solving. So at the first job, I was just like, managing. Oh, I felt like there had to be like, what's the best practice approach to tackling problems? I just wanted a more rigorous approach, like a structured. I wanted that kind of training. Second thing I wanted, I was very curious, like consulting firms advise many of the largest companies, governments, frankly. I mean, so I was curious, like, what are these major CEOs and boards? What's on their mind? What are they thinking about? What kind of problems are they dealing with? I wanted to know, I was just curious.
Right.
And then the third thing was I wanted to develop a toolkit that could potentially lead me out of oil and gas if I so desired. Because again, this whole roller coaster, that
Gotcha.
on my first job, just seeing the cuts was
Yeah.
um, it's eye-opening until this day. Like I'm like, that was
Right.
crazy.
Right.
So I wanted to develop a toolkit that could potentially lead me out of that industry.
Right. Nice. Nice.
Those are
Nice.
the three things.
Nice. And so you get into this job in a consulting firm.
Yeah.
Then how was that? What did
How
you?
did that go?
Yeah.
It was it was and it was challenging.
What was
Um
the first part of that? We're
it
cutting
was
out a
great.
little bit.
It was great and it was
Okay.
challenging.
Okay.
So I mean so many thoughts at the same time. So my experience was unique because again, I joined in the energy group. I joined like in March. Whereas most people join consulting firms, they join like after business school or law school or PhD programs, and they start in the fall. And many of them, they have interned already, so they already have like their contacts, their friends, which is great. I just started in March, so it's like off cycle and non-traditional. Um, for me, it was, I went in there thinking, yeah, I can make some pretty good PowerPoint slides and pretty good Excel models. I quickly learned that there are levels to this thing. I was a neophyte, I didn't know it. And it's
I
one of
don't
those,
even. Go ahead.
yeah,
What
it's
were you
one
saying?
of those things where like, it's one of those things where you're like a local champion, but you don't know it.
Yep. Yep.
So it's nice to go play in a place where there is a way to do things that's really thought out, and people who are sharp, it just helps raise your game. um I learned so much more than I imagined in terms of like communication, in terms of just organizing my thoughts, in fact being very structured. Like it's impacted even the way I'm talking to you today. It's There are things in it. You'll notice me, I'll have like the three takeaways, for example. Those are That's consulting coaching right there.
Wow.
um, like how to approach things. it's also given me, it also gave me confidence that I can analyze a problem. And I think engineering education teaches you that if you just persevere and you keep attacking a problem, you can solve it eventually, right? I think consulting also gives you that kind of confidence that like you can figure out what are the key drivers of situation and figure out ways to turn things to improve the situation. You know? So I've been a bit vague. I'll get a bit more tactical now. So for me, everyone's experience in a consulting firm is extremely unique, obviously, right? And basically, for most of my experience, I was working on teams of like about 4 people. Um, and we are basically tasked with solving a problem. So sometimes it could be like a strategy problem. Maybe it could be like someone is trying to buy another company. Maybe it's like a procurement problem. So I'll give you more examples. So like, let's say, I'm going to make up an example to be clear. This is not real, but it could be. So let's say Exxon was thinking about buying Chevron. Well, let's say Exxon was saying, let's say the board of Exxon, which is a big oil company, they said, okay, we need to grow. We need to accelerate our growth. And so then I bring my company and say, okay, how can you accelerate your growth? And you can either grow organically or you can grow inorganically by acquiring someone. So either of those options is a consulting project. We can work with them to help you figure out, here's how you can grow effectively to reach your goals. Or if you want to buy someone, okay, here are the opportunities, here's what makes sense for you to consider, here's, that sort of thing. So it was wonderful training, wonderful exposure to the world of business. Like for me, it was almost like my business school. I don't have an MBA till today, but I can hang with them.
Nice. That's amazing. That is, and obviously me and you have had, these discussions one-on-one, but it's amazing that you were able to get that from this.
Yeah.
Where did you go from there as far as consulting?
So I did it for a couple, almost 3 years, just over 3 years, and it's hard in terms of, it can be hard in terms of like lifestyle. For me, most of the time I was traveling. I fly out either Sunday night or Monday morning, and I fly back home on Thursday night or Friday every
Right.
week.
Wow.
And so it can be challenging on relationships. It can be challenging in terms of fitness. I know I gained 10, 15 pounds. I have buddies who've gained 50 over a couple of years, not just in 1 year.
Yeah.
But so it can be, and for me, I wasn't convinced that, I got curious. I mean, I felt like I was on the outside looking in a bit. Like I would offer recommendations to come to our clients, and that's it. Like, were the recommendations executed? Sometimes. Were they executed fully? Sometimes, maybe not. And so for me, I started getting curious about being closer to the action,
Gotcha.
as opposed to like advising people. That was one thing. The other thing was like the travel at that point in time was getting a bit, and for me, mine was also extra because I was in a long distance relationship. And so I was traveling for work, and on the weekend, I see my then girlfriend, now wife, but then I'd go to New York, I go to Boston. Then I just felt I was everywhere. Like I was always, it felt very unsettled, always in the plane, literally every 3, 4 days. Or sometimes like it was a lot. So so we decided to move on. And recently, this has happened like in the last couple of months. And so now I've joined a different company, new industry in financial services. I've joined the payment space. And payments it's a really interesting space, right? It's, I think of it payments anytime you move money. So let's say like via Venmo, you're sending Venmo, you're sending a check to someone, you're sending a wire, you're putting down payment to your house, that sort of thing. To me, payments is kind of like the pipelines for commerce.
Right.
That is what drives commerce. I mean, these oil companies or pharmaceutical companies, like they're trying to receive payments for the services and products that they provide. Like, how do you get that from A to B most effectively? And it's a space that's really ripe for disruption. And for me, one thing that's been important to me to think about is everywhere I've gone, um, I've always thought about, okay, how can this tie back to Nigeria? How can this tie back to Africa?
Right.
And for me, when I was thinking about payments, like, yeah, there are definitely clear opportunities um, to do good and also to do well, right? Like, I know in terms of like transferring money from here to like relative to Nigeria sometimes can be a pain. Um, then I also started thinking about just how about finances and financial independence. And I ran into the lady who runs the US reading program for West Africa. I met her randomly at the Nigerian embassy,
Wow.
and she was sharing with me like literacy rates in northern Nigeria. Like, it's crazy, like
Literacy
20%
rates.
literacy rate, yeah. And she was sharing like about 10% of women can read and write. Only 10 in northern Nigeria. In the south,
Wow.
it's like 60, 70%. It's crazy. And then for men, it's like only 30% of men in northern Nigeria can read or write. And I started thinking, like, if these brothers and sisters are not able to read and write, how can they use the internet?
Hmm.
And like, I mean, yes, like how like the world is changing so fast. I know I'm always on my cell phone and reading so many things. Like, how are their lives? I'm so sorry. How are their lives? Like, and so, and even business, how are they going to be empowered to do business in the future? It's really quite worrisome. I
Right.
mean,
Right.
it,
Right.
large chunks of our population don't have the equipment to engage in the future of commerce. And then I started thinking more about women empowerment, because oftentimes, right, women like will if a woman is good, her kids are good. And if the kids are good, that's the future, right? And and I just started thinking about there are just opportunities to improve the costs of business on these people. Um, for example, let's say there's a man, an Alaji in the north. He has 3 wives, and each of them is like a small scale subsistence farmer. And Alaji now wants to marry his fourth wife because he can. And this woman, she wants her kids to go to school, but she has to pay. And Alaji is like, maybe only the boy should go to school, doesn't have enough money. But if she's doing business, she might be able to save and invest and keep some of that money for herself, maybe to send her daughters to school as well. And but thinking like right now, like, does she have means to access those sorts of solutions for her? Or is she just keeping the money under her mattress? And under her mattress, Alaji can come when she's outside and can just carry the money and go, you know? So I was just thinking about this, and I think there are opportunities to obviously like help drive literacy in the north, everywhere, frankly, but
Right.
also let's think about how can we carry along everyone as we're marching forward in technology. One thing that worries me is like the next Einstein, the next Elon Musk, whatever, could be like in northern Nigeria and it's just like doesn't have the equipment to be all they can be.
Right.
And
The tools, the resources.
the tools, the resources. And I think, you know, I know in my own family situation, like my grandfather, his my great grandfather was like a farmer, and it was like, my son, you'll be a farmer too. My grandpa was like, nah, and he was like, he told his mom that he wanted to continue his education, he wanted to move to the big city, and my grandpa was like, no, this all this school you are doing, not necessary. You're going to be a farmer like me. So, and
You
he
mean your great
eventually,
grandfather?
my great grandfather, what he told my grandpa.
Yeah.
And so my grandpa worked with his mom, and she used her contacts and she saved some money on the side, and he basically ran away.
Wow.
Ran away to Lagos, and he stayed with his mother's cousin, his mother's uncle, I think, a relative. And there he learned to sew, and he became a successful business owner.
Wow.
Um, but he had a drive within him. Luckily, he had some tools. He'd gotten some basic education already, and the rest, was supportive. But there are other people like my grandpa who who you know are are not able to pursue their dreams. And that's unfortunate, right?
Yeah.
The world is better off if there is more opportunity for all.
Definitely.
I think finances are just one area that's really critical. I mean, personal finance is critical. Payment space is interesting, but personal finance is really critical. And I think even now with COVID, so many people have lost their jobs. I mean, it's the worst downturn, fastest downturn, and it's crazy. And
Right.
it's very uncertain for even those who have their jobs. There's a lot of economic anxiety. And I think for me, one thing I recognize is that from my experience, there's always opportunity, even in the midst of a recession. We started a product and it was successful, right?
Right.
So there is always opportunity. Another thought for me is, and this is something, I'm trying to do for myself and our family, is like, it's critical to diversify income and have multiple streams, um, live within your means, and really save. And whether it's saving, investing, starting a small business, you get into real estate. But I think those things which, looking back, I was fortunate because my dad continued, like he just involving me in some things as a teenager, and I started learning more closely. Um, and my brother as well, and my brother and I, we talk about these things from time to time, and I'm very grateful for that. But I'm realizing, by no means do we have this thing figured out. I'm not saying we do, but I'm realizing that, um, like the Federal Reserve Board, the American Central Bank, they released a report saying, I think I might mangle this slightly, but about 47% of Americans, if they had to pay a $500 emergency bill,
Can't
they
handle it.
would be on.
Yeah,
Yeah, and it
I
was
know. No,
scary.
that's not off.
That,
I saw that too.
and it's just like, wow. And I think, and I read this great article by this, I think it was in the New Yorker, I'm not sure, or the Atlantic, one of them. But this writer who, he's like, on the outside, you look at me and think I'm upper middle class. And he's like, but guess what? I have a dirty secret. I am one of the 47%. I'm like, whoa. And he's a very successful writer. I think he went to an Ivy League school, masters. He's worked for all the big magazines. He's written books that have become movies. I mean, he's not a
Wow.
small boy. He's been very successful writing career. He is so economically vulnerable.
Right.
And he walked through in detail how he got to where he is. And I was like, wow. And for me, other thing, one I think about too is like every couple of years, the Wall Street Journal always highlights this high earning dual career couple, right? There's one I saw was like a doctor and a lawyer. They live in Chicago and they make like, I don't know, 400,000, and yet they're essentially living paycheck to paycheck. And I think they managed to save like 10K a year, and they break down their entire budget. And for years, I'm like, you're earning 400K. Like, yo, surely you could save half of that, you know? But then with age comes wisdom. And I can understand how many people fall into that bracket because, like, for them, they both had grad school debt, they were paying back, they had a mortgage for $1 million townhouse in a nice part of town or something. It wasn't extravagant, it's a 3-bedroom townhouse. It was a heavy mortgage.
Right.
They had to have a nanny that cost 60K. Kids had to go to private school. That's more money, another 60K a year. Then they have to go to Europe once a year because that's what they do. They work hard. They make a lot of money, right? So one trip to Europe every year. It's a little indulgence for your hard work. And they both, they drive BMW or Mercedes Benz. They have leases on them. They basically walk you through. I'm like, wow, like it's so easy to see how people can get there. And then furthermore, Elizabeth Warren, she wrote a book with her daughter years ago. I think it's called The Two Income Trap, and talked about how two high earning professionals, they're basically more like they're 3 times as likely as a single person to file for bankruptcy.
Wow.
And it doesn't make sense because, like, for many people, like the dual income, dual professional thing is like, ooh, power couple, they're kind of like the dream. You're now telling them that, hey, if you get that, you're 3 times as likely to file for bankruptcy.
Right.
It doesn't make sense. But then when you think through people culturally, we spend money, right? People are like, okay, we earn so much, we need to have this, to have that, and next thing you know, you're really vulnerable. Like if one thing goes wrong, all bets are off.
You're screwed.
You're screwed. And so I think, that's something for me, I'm personally becoming more passionate about. And again, I have a lot of friends in oil and gas who have been impacted by this, where on paper, like one year they're having an amazing time, everything is looking good. They're both dual income earners, they're making a lot of money, they have a good life, going on holiday, vacations, nice car, everything. Life is good. And then a layup happens, and it's hard to get a job because your skill set is so specific. It's hard for you to pivot,
Right.
and it's not easy. So I think I wished colleges really emphasized financial awareness. Like there's a course you're required to take before you graduate. I wish, not our society, I wish we talked about these things more often. And, but our society, we tend to be a bit showy, right? Nigerians are quite showy. And it's just like, we oftentimes celebrate what looks like wealth, but it's just high consumption. It
I,
doesn't mean like, and this is America, everything can be leased. It doesn't mean own it.
or
And
rented or
so,
Airbnb'd or yeah.
and it's fine. Like I'm all for like renting and do what makes sense for you. But
No, but
it's
you're speaking to something that, sorry to cut you off, but
oh,
you're
please
speaking
go ahead.
you're speaking to something that is very it's all it's every you want to say Nigerians and I want to say Nigerians as well
Mhm.
because we can be a very flashy people, I'm just
Yeah.
I don't even really know this guy, but I've heard a couple people mention this. Is it Basket Mouth or some guy some
Yeah.
guy that
He's awesome.
maybe it's the wrong person,
Oh,
but
Hush Puppy.
Hush Puppy. Yeah, I didn't.
Hush Puppy. Hush Puppy in jail now.
So it was this guy that was doing that was flaunting
Yeah.
on and stunting on the gram, with all this money that that was basically like unemployment fraud, some type of fraud that he was doing. A lot of our we've seen that, and going even beyond that, you talked about Elizabeth Warren's book. I saw a thing that Gabrielle Union did, an interview that she gave towards the start of the pandemic, where she was talking about how a lot of these entertainers and these actors, actresses, people that you see again on Instagram taking lavish trips, doing X, Y, and Z. Now that they can't work, there's nothing. They need a handout. She was kind of
Yeah.
advocating or saying that, yeah, they need, being bailed out as well. Um, and I think
Yeah.
it's not necessarily just a Nigerian,
It's not.
thing. It's an American and maybe even a global kind of thing that gets people. It's a mindset really of keeping
Yeah.
up with the Joneses.
Yeah. It's very I have a lot of empathy, and honestly, like, most people are literally one or two bad breaks from bankruptcy.
Right.
If if you don't have insurance, you lose your job and you get sick, and you don't have access to healthcare, and God
Right.
forbid, something that's cancer. I
Right.
mean, that's $250,000 right now. So I have a lot of, and I just pray that we can all be healthy and have good situations.
Right.
I think for me, I think it's about protecting yourself, being a good steward, and protect yourself.
Yeah.
I love a good vacation. I like to be treated well, and it's funny. My wife will tell you, like, you know, yeah, I'm the one. I always make sure I pick the hotels because I would like my vacation to be better than my life. Why not? So,
Yeah.
you know, I do like some nice experiences, but
As
this,
I do too, bro. Like trust me, hey, we out here, bro. We out here.
yeah. But at the same time, you need to. It's so important, especially like every time you're going through like a downturn or recession. One has to think about what else can I do on the side, and start where you are. Even if you have $5 or $10 to invest in a month, do it. Because I think for me, it's a little about the discipline, and you know the journey of 1,000 miles,
Uh,
cliche, but it does start with the first step.
right.
And so, like, start where you are. Like, find whether it's Robinhood or you find some index fund, or just start putting $10 aside for basic investments, and let
I would
it.
also I would say even your just even if it's just a company 401k
Oh,
retirement
for
plan.
sure. That's free money. Mm,
Whoa, like if I
that's
tell
free.
you, so I left 2 companies ago. um the a company that I was with that I left about, I think I left that company about a year ago. And so I had contributed to the 401k, and they had matched at half the rate that I contributed.
Good.
Um, and so I did the max. They they matched their maximum amounts, and I left the company after almost 5 years, right? And so you stop contributing. They're not contributing anymore, but I decided to leave it in there.
Mm.
I didn't withdraw it. I didn't do it. I just left it, and I didn't add anything to it. I didn't add a penny to it. In a year, even with this pandemic, the slump that we saw in March, that the stock market hit and it went down in March. I, if I tell you that that amount has grown by over 10K, even with that still,
Yeah.
without me, adding a penny to it,
Yeah.
I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
And then of course I'm very passionate about this as well, because I feel like I know that it's an issue with a lot of people. You know, a lot of people don't. you know, like you said, if one thing goes wrong, they're out of a job. You know, God forbid you
Hmm.
get sick. God forbid you're, you know, yeah, have a health scare or whatever. Or, you know, if it's, you know, maybe your child or, you know, a family member or whatever. And now you see all these GoFundMe's, you know, popping up. So,
Yeah,
unfortunately, but I think
it's yeah.
I think you have to protect yourself. I think you have to definitely, you know, learn to cut your coat according to your size. That's something that you know, we're not always we've heard, but we don't sometimes we don't necessarily take too much. But knowing that, hey, if you don't if you don't have the money to buy something, don't buy it. You don't or don't or don't if you don't have the resources to afford this lifestyle that you want to live, just live the lifestyle that you can live. Like forget about what anyone else thinks. You know, do what you can afford without putting yourself into more debt. You know, that a lot of people kind of do.
Yeah, I think for sure. Like, I think the first thing is a couple principles, right? First thing is you save first.
Right.
Kind of like
Pay
how
your
you put, like, you're traveling on the plane, you put your own air mask first, and then you have a person next to you. You got to save first,
mhm.
and whatever it is, save first. Protect yourself. Just get in the habit. You know, my dad, he would say, growing up, he would say things like, set a goal, and this is, set a goal and figure it out.
Yeah.
So don't necessarily be constrained by your current. So, for example, and he's probably fine with me sharing the story, but the first house my dad purchased or built in Nigeria, right? It was he saw this house. I was like, oh my god, like this is the lifestyle I want for my family. This is where I want to be in the future. And so he started thinking, but based off his income at that point in time, did not make sense. But then when you have goal and you just like you focus on it, you can start finding new ways to make up the gap. So
Right.
whether that means for a person you start a side business, or whether it means you turn your hobby into start charging for it. There's so many things you can do online, in person, Uber, whatever.
Right.
I follow a guy on Instagram who he lives in Atlanta. Dude basically like goes around. You know those like tricycle, not the tricycle, like the birds you get on. He basically like has a truck. Dude picks up like 10, 12 at night, charges that thing overnight, takes it back out. That's like paid off his student loans. Over
Wow.
30K. Over
Wow.
30K.
Nice.
Charging.
Right.
But so for my dad, he basically, put that out there and he was able to find the funds somehow. Legal means necessarily only legal, but
Right.
be able to create, and that was for him. It was transformational. And sometimes I get myself thinking, like, oh man, I really want this. So let's say he's like, don't feel constrained by your salary. If you want something, you make it happen. But that means yeah. And I think that's something that's so important. I feel too many of us have taken on labels. This is, oh, I am, I'm an accountant. I studied accounting, so I'm an accountant. I can do accounting jobs. Fine. But you may have 35 years experience as a cook. You may have years experience sewing stuff or driving or like, right, there's so many things you can do. You could be an Amazon reseller. Like there's so many things you can do. Real estate, I don't know, or Airbnb, right? And once you start opening up your mind and taking off the limits of who you are, it leads to creativity.
That's
But
amazing.
one needs to be disciplined that you don't get in over yourself. But as long as you like create more and you keep on trying, the first thing might not work, second thing might not work, but you keep on trying, you will make it, you will get there.
Right.
So
Right.
I feel like it's just like take the limits off, you know,
Yourself.
don't see yourself just only as just one thing. And Nigerians, we're great. I love the spirit of Lagos is like I went back to Nigeria for Christmas. I go back most years, almost every year. And I was at a party, met this guy. He was like, I was in mid-20s then. He was like a few years younger than me. And we so what do you do? He's like, oh, I'm a student. Oh, wow, what are you studying? It was Lagos Business School. At the same time, it's like, yeah, I also import cars. I'm like, oh, wow. Yeah, I also export leather. I'm like, wow. And then he was like, he does something with cement. I think he sells cement while all being a full-time student. And
Wow.
that's like the spirit of
Yeah.
Lagos to me.
The hustle.
Like the hustle, you make it happen. You have the 9 to 5. This funny, whether you're selling eggs on the side. My grandma, she sold eggs
Yeah.
at a point in time, and many other things.
Right.
Like there is no shame. There's no dignity. There's always dignity in work, right? It doesn't
Right.
matter,
Regardless,
I,
exactly.
exactly. And
As long as
sometimes,
it's legal.
unless it's legal,
Right. We don't want to do that hush puppy, whatever.
please, we don't need any.
We got too
No
many.
more.
Yeah. But no, that's awesome because I'm actually in that phase right now of taking where I had to step back and say, hey, I'm a pharmacist. You know, I'm in healthcare. Okay, so is that all I can do? No, I've there's more to me. One, I've been in leadership these last, like 3 years or so almost. What what does that mean? How can I leverage that? How can I get, do more with that? Okay, fine, doing that now. Okay, I've been in kind of real estate in a way. You know, I was able to get my first property and, do things with that. Okay, now how do I get back in that in a way? How do I, you know, and so I'm kind of in the process of kind of doing that and now it's, kind of finding this, with the podcast and, kind of with the social media channels and, Instagram, YouTube, all that stuff of, okay, now kind of putting myself out there more, in a way and removing this label of, oh, I'm just this, you know,
Mhm.
that no, I'm me and there's many gifts and talents and I can kind of do, you know, a
Yeah,
lot of different things. It's not just the one thing, that
exactly.
I've been trained and conditioned to do, for however long. And so I think that's amazing because that's where personally I've been going through and learning that and, seeing being able to remove that layer and getting into different aspects of different things. And so,
Fisaya, it's so important. I mean, particularly for our generation,
right.
we have to continually reinvent ourselves. I
Yeah.
think for
Re-
me, this is my fourth job, but kind of like my second or third career in a way. And
wow.
reinvent yourself because the nature of jobs are changing,
Right.
and uh, jobs of yesterday are going to be automated.
Yep.
Machines will be doing some of them. AI will be doing, it's going to be automated,
Right.
and new opportunities created.
Right.
And we need to have the growth mindset to embrace and reinvent ourselves. And it's so important. Otherwise, because if you do not reinvent yourself, if you're opposed to changing with the times and evolving to try new things, sometimes you may be forced to. So it's better for you to
To get
choose to reinvent yourself.
yeah, get ahead of that. And
Yeah. And what you're saying about like taking off the labels of a person, like that's so important. Like I think, I'm in my early 30s and I'm still the things I knew about myself, I'm still learning about myself. You
right.
know, we don't fully. I think human beings are wonderfully made, and most of us only scratch the surface of what we're capable of.
Right.
And so, if we see ourselves the way that our maker sees us, there's just so much we can do.
Right.
But we have obstacles. Like some obstacle, people like me, I'm very analytical. And one obstacle, people like me sometimes is overanalysis. So they say you have a business idea. Let me just build a model in Excel to forecast if it's worth my time. You'll be building, building, building. By the time you finish, you found a million reasons no. And maybe they might be small. Yes, there's some valid risks, but start. Start something.
Yeah. And just keep
Take a
going.
measured risk
Right.
and try something, and you will learn from that experience.
Right.
And I'm kind of in that process too, of just like building something by myself this time, and just put it out there, and you learn. And for me, my expectation is not to have rocket growth. My expectation is here just make a sale,
Okay. Yeah.
make a sale. And that's process of you creating a product and selling it, victory. Then you have learned a step one. Step two, make two sales, or maybe learn and figure out, is this product the right product or not? But that
Right.
builds confidence. Because one thing that I listen to podcast now, lately I'm listening to How I Built It on NPR, the NPR podcast. And they feature entrepreneurs. The last one I listened to was the one by the lady Payal. She started ClassPass, and you know, she had to like, you just start something, just try, and but be open to reinventing yourself and your products.
Right.
So I think the fear of once you learn how to set the bar and learn that there isn't anything as real failure, it's just you learned a way that didn't work,
Yeah.
or you took like that frees you to pursue things more boldly and stop caring about the Joneses. Like, at the end of the day, half the people in this country cannot afford $500 and surprise bill.
Right.
Chances are half the people you're trying to impress are broke. you know,
Right.
like, doesn't matter. Everyone has issues. We're all trying to figure this out together.
Right.
So just do you and start where you are, and be open to reinventing yourself and reinventing the things you create, and just go for it.
Awesome, man. Man, this was really good. Yes, that was really good. Unfortunately, we have to stop here for now. But stay tuned for the third and final installment of this great interview with Folabi. And if you're enjoying this, please like, comment, and subscribe to the podcast, the Instagram page, and the YouTube channel for more. Thank you. See you soon.